This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I've got 9:31. We'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Killeen-Temple Metropolitan Transportation Planning Policy Board order, noting that we do have a quorum. First item on the agenda is public opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone attending here in person like to comment?
Anybody on the line?
How could they pass up that opportunity? I just,
Once in a lifetime.
Yes, I mean, we offer it to them. And item number 3 on the agenda, staff updates. You're right.
Okay, as you'll see on the screen and in your packet, if you grabbed one on the way in, we've got our upcoming KTMPO meetings. All those are scheduled for 9:30 here at the COG offices, except for the January 24th Freight Advisory Committee that will be held here at the COG offices at 2:30 p.m. For other updates, the Bell County Thoroughfare Plan that we've been working on, we took that, our draft to the Bell County Commissioners Court a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. There were some citizens that were concerned about the plan. So the commissioners have requested that we open a couple more sessions for public input and public involvement. So we're doing that before we finalize that plan with the county. And you'll see that information for those public hearings will be sent out. You should all receive those in case you're interested in attending any of those sessions. We don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but staff are going to coordinate with Bell County and the commissioners to get those scheduled. The Governor's Community Achievement Awards, that is a grant program. Those are open and applications are due February 16th by 5 p.m. If you have any questions on that program, feel free to reach out to James. KTMPO Safety Plan funding, I spoke to this probably a month or 2 months ago. That's $50,000 that TxDOT will be contracting with MPOs to use specifically for safety activities. We have not received a contract from TxDOT yet on that, but I anticipate that we'll receive one shortly. When we do receive that, you will see another request for a UPWP amendment because those funds have to be accounted for in the UPWP. So possibly next month, there will be a UPWP amendment that'll be taken before TAC and Policy Board for approval to get that $50,000 incorporated should I receive the contract prior to that. The 2020 census urban area update, the populations in urban areas were released. Last month, we spoke about the possibility of expanding the boundaries with the census numbers being released. We're still looking into that possibility. We're, of course, are not going to take any action on that or move forward with the study that we discussed last month without board approval. So we still have about another month before we make a determination on how that looks, what it looks like, and should we bring it to the bring it to the board with some additional information for determination on if we should do that study and what possible expansion looks like. Just as of right now, we're waiting on some additional funding information from TxDOT. I did get the first round of information I requested. I was just really trying to see how we are funded for our planning activities, but I'm also trying to see how we're funded for construction dollars and get actual numbers for the Killeen and Temple urban areas. So I'm waiting on that information from TxDOT. So one thought on the expansion, the possibility of an expansion is Bell County, Coryell County, and Lampasas County are all one metropolitan statistical area, or MSA, as designated by the census. That would possibly be the cleanest and easiest expansion. But before making any determinations like that, I would also need to speak to the Brownwood District as well as the Waco District to see what implications that might have to not only our funding, but their funding as well. So there will be more on the possible expansion, boundary expansion and discussion and possible study for that in coming meetings. Possibly next meeting we'll have something to take action on. Our KTMPO Federal Certification Review, you should have all received an email from me. If you didn't, please let me know. We did get that back. I sent out the information. We had 6 commendations, 15 recommendations, and a corrective action. Like I mentioned in the email, we'll continue working toward implementing any of those recommendations that are feasible, working with the HOP, anything they may need in regard to the Federal Certification Review recommendations, and then getting that corrective action remedied. That was to update our congestion management process. Next month, Federal Highways will be at the policy board meeting to provide a presentation or update on the FCR to the board.
You're right, excuse me,
Yes,
but
ma'am.
commendations, you should be applauded for those commendations. Obviously, you and your staff.
Staff, yes, ma'am.
Well, all of you. You can't just sit here and ignore them. It's important to have all done.
Thank you, ma'am. And the last thing I have, well, almost the next to last thing is this hefty document here. I'm not going to read word for word and page by page. This is the summary of the Appropriations Act 2023. I did highlight some areas that I'd like to touch base to share with you all. We will send this out in a follow-up email for you to review in its entirety if you wish. If you have any questions on anything in it, please feel free to reach out to staff. In total, the regular 12 appropriations bills included $800 billion in non-defense funding, 68 billion, 9.3% increase over last year. This is the highest level of non-defense funding ever, and a larger increase in both dollar and percentages than fiscal year 2022. There is nearly $4 billion for rural development programs, $455 million for broadband expansion, $1.47 billion for rural water and wastewater infrastructure. Department of Commerce, $498 million, an increase of $124 million above fiscal year 2022. It includes $121 million for EDA's public works programs. And then for transportation specific, fiscal year 2023, the bill provides $106.3 billion in budgetary resources for DOT. This is an increase in $3.4 billion above fiscal year 2022 and $1.9 billion above the president's 2023 budget request. $800 million has been included for national infrastructure investments. This is the Raise, Tiger, Build programs that many apply for. This is an additional, that is on top of the previously allocated and authorized Raise program funding. $19 billion for federal aviation, $873 million for Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and $16.9 billion for the Federal Transit Administration, which includes $13.6 billion for transit formula grants. And then in the disaster relief supplemental appropriations, there was additional $1.18 billion for economic development. Like I said, I'll send this out. Feel free to go through it. If you have any questions, reach out to staff. Any programs in there that you have an interest in, staff are here to help with those.
You're right.
Yes.
A while back, we had a working group on a safety study. Did you guys ready to submit? Hear anything back on that?
The safety study.
The US DOT Safe Streets for All.
So the Safe Streets and Roads for All, that has not been sent out yet. Those haven't been approved or denied. We haven't received anything on those. We did, while we were going through that, of course, have some conversations with Coryell County because there were some overlapping areas. But once we do hear on that, we'll let everybody know.
That's good. Thank you.
And the last thing I have is the air quality update, which was 48 and 46 parts per billion. And I will open for any questions. comments?
Anything for you, Ryan? Thank you, Ryan. Moving on to item number 4, which is an action item regarding the approval minutes of the December 14th, 2022 meeting. That's on page 12 and through 14 of the packet went out. Is there any discussion, corrections? All right, I would entertain a motion. Oh, yes, sir.
Yes, I'm just looking at the members present. Just want to make sure that you have that correct. I believe I was an alternate for Mr. Ford that day. My mistake. Could be.
We'll check on that.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's.
Yeah, we can check on that, and if you were, we can make the correction.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion we accept with that asterisk.
We've got a motion and a second to approve the minutes with that annotation on verification on the members present. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Ayes have it, motion carries. Item number 5 on the agenda, again, is an action item regarding resolution 2023-01, supporting the FY23 Safety PM1 performance targets for KTMPO, established by the Texas Department of Transportation, pages 16 through 21 in your packet. James?
Thank you, Judge. This resolution is one of several that we pass every year. The safety performance rule is one of 6 required performance measures that the MPOs across the nation are supposed to track and set targets for. The safety one, there's 5 different categories in the safety specific measure that we're supposed to track. That's number of fatalities, fatalities per million miles traveled, number of serious injuries per million vehicle miles traveled, and number of non-motorized fatalities, non-motorized serious injuries. TxDOT sets targets for the whole state every year, and they send those to us. Historically, KTMPO has adopted those targets due to lack of information about local specific numbers. We have been working on our safety data dashboard, and that's up and running now, but there is a deadline for us to set targets for FY23 by February 27th of this year. And due to the lack of time, staff decided it was more prudent for us to recommend adopting the state's targets for 1 more year, and then look into setting our own targets starting in FY24. You can see here the targets for the entire state. Those numbers at the very bottom of each table. It's the 2023 target expressed as a 5-year average. So, number of fatalities is 3,682. Total number of serious injuries, 17,062. Fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled is 1.38. Serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled is 6.39. And total number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries is 2,357. TAC did recommend approval of this resolution at their meeting last week. And so the action before the board today is to consider approving resolution 2023-01, supporting TxDOT safety performance targets for FY23. There is a resolution in the packet, and it includes some specific language about KTMPO supporting TxDOT's Road to Zero goal. We do believe that no injury or fatality is acceptable, but since we're required to set targets, we have language in there setting those targets, and the numbers are listed. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So you mentioned in 2024 we would have our own, and you said this is a statewide number. So have we looked at what our prorated portion? I mean, are we looking at it as what our actual contribution has been to the fatalities? Or are we looking at the number of vehicles and the miles? I mean, how are we looking at just curious, how do we look at setting those targets for 24?
So
Go ahead.
The next agenda item, I believe, is
Oh, I'm sorry.
creating a work group to discuss and propose how we would establish those targets.
Sorry for jumping ahead.
That's a good question.
That's a good question. It makes me think maybe we should have moved that down. This agenda item maybe past the work group. But that's one of the things that the work group should that be approved. You take a motion.
Any other discussion or questions for James? If not, I would entertain a motion concerning resolution 2023-01.
Move to approve as presented.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you. Item number 6 on the agenda, again, is an action item regarding the creation of KTMPO Workgroups. This is covered on page 24 of your packet, proposing 3 work groups being created, KTMPO Bylaws, Safety Target Setting, which we just kind of reviewed, and the KTMPO Project Scoring. James. No, you're Ryan, I'm sorry.
Oh.
You're Ryan, yeah.
James,
James, you want to cover that?
So this is when Judge Miller and Councilmember Long were elected to their positions as the KTMPO officers. We met and had a discussion on how it may be beneficial possibly to create some work groups so that the entire board or the entire TAC is not tasked with some of the items that come before, so they could have a work group. They could then present recommendations to the board and have discussion that way. It would free up some of the board time. Those work groups, the current ones that we're thinking are possibly a work group for the KTMPO bylaws, especially with the consideration of the boundary expansion, possibly in the future, as well as the new census numbers, because there are some information in our bylaws that for membership that directly relates to numbers. So the KTMPO bylaws, safety target setting, that would for the safety performance measures. Those 2 work groups would possibly have 5 members from the policy board and 2 from the TAC, and then a KTMPO project scoring, because we're about to start the process of updating and revising our scoring methodology for the next project call. That work group would possibly consist of 5 members from the TAC and 2 from the policy board. And then I will let Judge Miller speak to anything he'd like to on the item. But this is just action to create the work groups. And then, of course, if you have an interest on serving, you can send that to staff. And I will share that with Judge Miller as he considers those appointments.
I don't know that I've got all that much to add, other than, again, this isn't something we're trying to mandate, but I think it would help get some input, at a smaller level, because I don't know, it's just been my experience that when we're trying to do things in large groups, it tends to get drawn out, protracted, and this would allow, a few volunteers the opportunity to meet in addition to these meetings, barely to be able to focus in on kind of what the key concerns are here. As Ryan mentioned, we are going to have to address bylaws. And, the options are we can address it as an entire board or those that would want to volunteer to spend a little extra time honing in on that, we do. And the same methodology follows along. And as Ryan mentioned, there's nothing being proposed as the definitive composition of those boards or these committees at this point. But it's my belief that the first 2 probably should be a little bit more policy board influenced. And then the 3rd committee, the project scoring, be a little bit more advisory committee influenced. Because in the grand scheme of things, this policy board does have the ability to change or reprioritize those recommendations from the TAC on project scoring. But it gives those that have a little bit more technical knowledge, a little bit more influence into how that project's going to be set. So again, this is not necessarily the composition, definitive composition. It's just kind of a concept, but it's whether this board wishes to create those 3 committees, and then we will start collecting those that wish to volunteer in specific areas. So welcome your comments or questions.
Your input concerning smaller groups working better than larger groups is very valid. I certainly second and support that. Just easier not to get defrayed.
Sometimes conversations, although very warranted and valid, can become protracted.
Saying, what did you have for breakfast?
Yeah.
Stick to the topic of the smaller group.
Any other?
No, I think those are 3 really good ones. I think the first one is boring. I think the second one because it's brand new, and third one is because it's controversial. So I think it's all good things to kind of take and work on the side.
You know, I really debated about the person because misery loves company. So
Some people love it. Some people.
If any other questions or comments? If not, I would entertain a motion concerning the creation of the 3 KTMPO work groups.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you. Item number 7 on the agenda, again, is an action item regarding recommending approval of the amendments to the FY23 through 26 Transportation Improvement Program TIP and the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan MTP for the projects. Those items listed included on pages 26 through 31 of your packet. James, I'll let you pick that one up.
Thank you, Judge. Yeah, so our KTMPO has 2 major plans. Our transportation improvement program is our short range plan that covers 4 years. Current TIP covers FY23 to 26. And our MTP, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, covers 25 years, and it has a longer list of projects we expect to be funded or are significant, but there may not be funding for. And the reason that we, when we do amendments, it's both of them is because they have to match when we submit the amended tip sheets to TxDOT. So that's why we have both of them, even though they're 2 separate plans, they need to coordinate together and say the same thing. So the proposed amendments today, or the proposed amendments, are one for the City of Troy's project for West Main Street and Luther Curtis Road. Their requested amendment is to reduce the project limits and decrease construction costs, and that is mostly due to inflation. And then the second project is the City of Parker Heights H3005 3D Warriors Path Phase 2, and that is a scope of work change to the description. There was a carryover from a previous phase that is not being constructed in this phase. I'll get to that in a second. So the City of Troy project, the previous funding amount was 3.2 million of category 7. The revised funding amount is just under 3 million. And the old limits were Church Avenue to 0.4 miles west of Lee Mays Boulevard. The new limits are Church Avenue to Lee Mays Boulevard, so it's 0.4 miles shorter of a project. The project description, or the work being taken, is not changing, just the distance that is being constructed or improved. Second project, Warriors Path Phase 2, the original project description had at the end of it the construction of a 10-foot shared use path on the east side of the road. For this phase, that 10-foot shared use path is not being constructed. It was left over, like I mentioned, from a previous phase. And so City of Parker Heights has requested that we remove that from the project description so that they could get the AFA completed. The dollar amount that is included is not changing because what was submitted was what they're actually constructing. Here's the schedule. I'll make a note in the agenda. It says consider approval of these amendments, and that's incorrect. The action being recommended today is to consider initiation of public involvement, and that'll be a 15-day public comment period and a public hearing tentatively scheduled for February 1st. Are there any questions? Happy to answer them.
I would note that TAC recommended approval of the D 4501 at their meeting. The Harker Heights project was not taken for consideration before the TAC. We didn't receive this until last week after the TAC had met. So this will be taken as an information update at the next TAC meeting. Should the policy board approve the initiation of public involvement for both projects?
Right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just a little bit on phase one, when that was done on Warriors Path, that was an effort by KIC, City of Harker Heights, Bell County, and the City of Noblesville. Okay, the phase two portion of that is that I would anticipate the City of Noblesville want to take care of the east side, because that's not in the Harker Heights city limits on the east side. I think that's one of the reasons why Mark wrote that letter, is that that's not our property.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions, comments, discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion recommending the initiation of public involvement, not approval, but initiation of public involvement for the amendments to the TIP and the MTP.
So moved. Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. I say the motion carries. Item number 8 on the agenda is a discussion item regarding resolution 2023-02, supporting the 2023 transit asset management, the TAM, performance targets established by Hill Country Transit District. Those were included on pages 34 through 38 of your packet. James.
Thank you, Judge. This is the first of 2 transit-related resolutions. We pass these every year, and like I mentioned with the safety performance targets resolution, this is another one of those 6 required performance measures that KTMPO and all MPOs must adopt. The transit asset management deals with the state of good repair for transit units. Instead of me talking about it, since I'm not the expert, I'll let Daryl speak to the actual targets and the numbers provided. We have a couple of tables here for you.
Yes, thank you, James. This is a routine document that we do every year. Typically, we wrap it at the end of the calendar year in terms of the KTMPO in January. This year is no different. I do, if you could go to page 13 in that packet, I do want to specifically talk about some targets. This is what we refer to as the TAMP, the Transit Asset Management. And the asset that we're talking about is rolling stock, typically maintenance equipment, and then facilities. And if you look at,
I think it's the one on the left.
yeah, right here, you've got a box around, a red box around our targets, our categorical targets for each of those 3 areas. You'll see that less than 30% is equal to or less than 30%. What we want is our equipment to no more than 30% of them to be past their useful life. We actually do run buses and keep our equipment considerably longer than what the useful lives are. And we do that by design. But we also typically have auctions every year. So we typically keep a rotation going, particularly on our vehicles, as take a large bus that is has a 12-year useful life of 500,000 miles. as that useful life deteriorates and then expires, we typically will auction that bus off, and then once it's auctioned off, we buy a new one to replace it. Since the pandemic, we have not been auctioning off buses. And I'm glad we made that decision early on, and I'm glad we did. I brought some historical numbers. Typically, I'm just going to use rolling stock as an example because that's a big one. Typically, rolling stock is either below our target or slightly above. And then the pandemic really got going in 2020 and 2022, kind of coming out of it, hopefully are now. The score for rolling stock was 33.6%. So we were 3.6% over our target at that point. It's in the ballpark and very good. That's 2020. 2021, we were at 34.5. 2022, for rolling stock, we were at 43.7% of our rolling stock was past its useful life. And as you can see on this one, this is the 2023, which is really the 2022 numbers, but we are at 75.4% of our rolling stock is past its useful life. So I want to point out that that's kind of a skewed number. Looks terrible, but because we have not been auctioning off our buses, our spare ratio has gone very high, and consequently, we have a lot of older buses that are past their useful life. So I'm not real concerned about that number, even though it looks bad. The reason we decided to stop with the auctions is because we wanted to be able to use parts off of those old buses to keep our newer buses running. This all relates back to the pandemic and the supply chain issues that we deal with. We're all dealing with it. It's very difficult to get parts. It's very difficult to get quality parts because of the differences in the steel quality, etc. So consequently, we typically do not use used parts on our vehicles, but early on in the pandemic, we saw a lot of this coming. I did write a letter to FDA, advise them that we were going to start using them unless they objected. And if they did, to let us know. They never got back to me, so we are doing that practice. So occasionally, maybe we'll need an alternator or something off of one of those old buses. We have those buses on hand for that purpose. So these numbers are a little skewed, but overall, I do want to commend our maintenance department. They do an incredible job because our fleet is aged, and they do an incredible job keeping it rolling. We make pull out most days. Sometimes we have to borrow a computer to pay Paul in order to make pull out. But we're doing. Questions?
Thanks, Daryl. There's a copy of the draft resolution. Staff will be bringing this to TAC and Policy Board in February for final recommendation of approval, similar to the next resolution.
Anything else on item number 8? Daryl, thanks for that. Good clarification. Moving on to item number 9, which again is a discussion item regarding resolution 2023-03, supporting the 2023 Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan. I'm not even going to repeat that. Performance targets established by the Hill Country Transit District. Those went out in your packet, covered under pages 40 through 43. Again, James and Daryl.
Yeah, so this is the newest of the 6 performance measures. Similar to the road safety resolution that we just passed, which was approved, but this is for public transit safety, and there's 7 different measures, and it's divided by mode, I believe. So there's 2 numbers for fatalities, injuries, and safety events, and then 1 for system reliability.
this is the correct page. So those categories, we do measure fatalities, rates of fatalities, injuries, rate of injuries, safety events, rate of safety events, and then mean distance between major mechanical failures. We measure all of those, and you'll see up on the board there a column that's called baseline and a column that's called target. By way of explanation, and also just in the interest of time, this is a document, the PTAS that was put together. It was first certified in 2020. And typically, we would approve these on an annual basis. Due to COVID, FTA actually extended it, circa, I think, a year. So the timeline of all of this has kind of gotten skewed, and they're working at getting it back online. But again, this is another routine document that we do every year. We meet as a PTAS committee every month. We go over every incident, every accident, really anything that might affect risk. The purpose of the PTAS is really to evaluate risk and evaluate whether we can do anything to lessen our risk. So sometimes we transfer risk, sometimes it's an acceptable risk, sometimes we have to write policy or procedure to help offset some risk. So we do that on a monthly basis. This document, we had some, it's not current right now because we had some personnel changes. In February, we will be bringing this to our Hill Country Transit District Board of Directors. They will be voting to approve the new personnel that are involved, and then we will, so it will be voted on in February, but then the meat of it, which are the content, specifically some of these measures, are still being calculated. It will be presented again in September to our board of directors. So these will come in line in September. But the baseline column is the column that reflects our numbers in 2020 when we first kicked this document off. So it is our baseline. Our target, which was negotiated with FTA and also very much TxDOT, we worked through these, and these were the targets that we selected. I can tell you that all of these numbers are all these analytics are very, very, very similar right now as what they were at 2020. So they are tracking pretty well. But there will be yet another document that's coming for you again. So with having said that, I mentioned some personnel changes. I want to take this opportunity to introduce one of those personnel changes. A while back, about a year or so ago, our board of directors wanted to hire a consulting firm to come in and really just kind of do a top to bottom evaluation of everything that we do, all of our services, how we track things, how we measure things, what we keep up with, how we report to TxDOT, FTA, et cetera. And they hired a company called Hendrickson Transportation Group. They are a very experienced consulting firm. They do a very good job. We had one individual named Steve Beck, who some of you probably met, who started that effort out. He's no longer here, but he has been replaced with Raymond Suarez, which is here, the head running along. So anyway, Raymond's here. I encourage you to talk to Raymond. He also has an incredible resume. He's bringing a lot to the table and introducing some changes that we're hoping to implement probably about the July timeframe, sometime this summer. And so we're progressing on that. We're going to be having a workshop with our board also in later part of February, maybe early March. I think that's still being fine-tuned. But very excited about some of the changes that are coming down the road for us in the way we provide service. So questions about safety measures or the PTAS in general?
Just got one comment.
Yes.
Just on your chart, it's defined in your resolution with the definition of VRM. So
I'm sorry, vehicles per revenue mile.
I understand, but it's in your resolution, but as far as first blush, it doesn't explain what that means.
Yeah, we run buses, when we are running them for the purpose of picking up passengers and transporting them from A to B, that is a revenue mile. But there are other times, maybe we need to run a bus to a vendor, or we need to take a bus from Killeen, maybe one in Killeen breaks down, so we need to borrow one from Temple and put it over into Killeen. It does happen, and we do that from time to time. We do track those miles, and it is all reflected in what we report to what is known as the National Transit Database, which is maintained by FDA. But there are reasons why we have to drive a bus somewhere for inspections or for maintenance or whatever the case may be. That is considered a non-revenue. So, and it's just a breakout. It's a distinction between a vehicle revenue mile and a vehicle non. Good question.
Thank you. Anything else for James or Daryl? Again, Daryl, thank you for the update, James as well. Moving on to item number 10, discussion regarding public input received through December 2020. Those are pages 46 through 47 in your packet. James.
We received some public comments since the last meeting. There's 4 new in the last few days, and I'll just highlight a couple. A resident called me last week and was sharing a concern for speeding along Blackberry Road, which is near Salado, I believe. And then the other one, we got a lengthy Facebook comment from a resident in Temple regarding transit and the section 5310 funding. Probably too hard to read, but it's in your packet if you like to read his comments. And that is in response to TxDOT's PTN Public Transportation Division is doing a survey on section 5310, and this was commented on our Facebook post promoting that with these comments. So, are there any other questions? There's a couple more minor comments in there if you'd like to read them. You're always welcome to reach out to staff about any of those.
And then additionally, not included in here, there were comments, multiple comments received, like I mentioned earlier, from the Bell County Thoroughfare Plan. Those are actually compiled in a different document that we can share with the policy board and a follow-up email. We keep those separate because it's a specific plan. These are for general commenting purposes. But we'll share those comments with you for your reference.
Good old Facebook. James, Ryan, thank you. Any comments or questions concerning that public comment? Very good. Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 11, member comments.
I do have one minor addition when I was talking about the auctions. We are starting those auctions back up again. I don't know how you all feel, but we're trying to consider the pandemic as really more or less over. It stays over. We are.
You're gonna let him know that this one doesn't have an alternator?
We do have to disclose things. But we're in the process of waiting on a few items to get lined up, coordination, next step, et cetera. But we will resume those auctions.
Daryl, thank you. Any other member comments?
I'd like to make just 2 comments real quick. One, excited to see the safety working group with all the work that the staff has done for the dashboard being data driven, being able to use that this year, which I know is their plan, and what we're doing as we're prioritizing new projects. I think we actually have a really good impact to decrease our safety numbers or improve our safety. So that's exciting to see, and I think that's really impactful and something we should keep our eye on this next year. And then the second comment is that Thoroughfare did get a lot of Facebook shares, so that's something to be aware of with your constituents as people want to know what long-term plan is for the thoroughfare, even though it is very long-term.
Very good, thank you. Any other comments? Well, I'll leave you with, I guess this is our first meeting of the year. I forgot to say Happy New Year to everyone. I hope your new year is off to a good start. And with that, I've got 10:16 and we stand adjourned. Thank you all.
All right.